Hey, this is Kevlar Golem. Just wanted to do a video, sort of an anti-meta video, I guess. I think it's always interesting to me to find chances where maybe the meta isn't quite as meta as it might seem. Uh, I think it's a good thing for games to not have rigid metas because the more viability of diverse gameplay is a good indicator of a well-made game. So I have a real fascination with looking for things that other people aren't doing, and maybe it works. So in this video, it's the enemy is running the non-meta. So my guild is what I think anyway, pretty standard meta. So just be aware that we're kind of rooting against my own team in this video. If you're a little confused as to why I'm speaking, sort of encouraging the enemy team, that's why, is because I think it's exciting that they tried something else. And spoiler alert, they don't win. In fact, we shut them out. But a lot of it is, I think we played very well. I think the enemy made some, you'll see, the enemy makes some pretty big mistakes that have nothing to do with their tech. It has nothing to do with their tech choices. So you'll see we're firing rockets already. I know people hate that strategy. I hate that strategy. Pretty meta to just sit at the warp gate and fire rockets. The enemy doesn't do that, and they could have. It really has nothing to do with this laser unity thing we're about to see them pull. I'm not going to touch on the guy running Mirror Shield. I'm not a fan of Mirror Shield, except its animation looks great. But I'm not really going to get into that. Really what I want to talk about is they are running... Oh, man, it doesn't show you what they're running in the freaking replay. All right. So what they're running is single laser with Unity. And you can see on their ships, you can see the Unity. And this is a 5v5. So every single person running Unity in a 5v5 is a pretty ballsy move, I think. Or maybe just not a smart move. We'll find out. Because it takes about 4 or 5 people, depending on how you've leveled it, to get the full effect from Unity. So that means every single person as battleship has to be in the same sector, unless they can get a support into the sector, and then that's its own sort of risk. But so Unity, if you're not aware, let's get into the actual description and such. So at level 2, which is where I have Unity, you get a 20% damage increase per player. They probably have it at 3 or 4, maybe 5. In which case they'll get a damage increase of probably around 25, maybe more percent. But it caps at 100, so you can't run a 20v20 and have like 200% damage increase. It caps at 100. So the higher levels, it just makes it easier to get to the cap. So maybe they only need 4 people in their sector to get to the cap instead of 5. I'm not sure if maybe at higher levels it raises the cap, but I don't think so. I think it caps it at 100 the whole time. And then single laser is not a very popular weapon at all. So I'm going to back this up here since we're already getting into the fight. Single weapon or single laser might be the most unpopular weapon. Other than that battery they start you out of the game with that you can't even level, that like trash battery or whatever it's called. Single laser is probably the least used weapon in the game, and it's because it takes a really long time for it to charge enough that it makes it better than regular battery. And that problem with single laser is exaggerated because basically everyone runs EMP. So let me just say what I think the meta is, at least at my level. We're getting into a little bit of barrier. We've seen Destiny a couple times. That's just because of the power of our guild. That's just, if we were higher level, we would be seeing a little more new things. But tech-wise, what we have available to us and at guilds that we're going to get matched with, we're seeing a little bit of barrier. I'm sure that number is going to skyrocket as we go up. Destiny also will go a little as we go up in level, but EMP, I think, is going to stick around even in higher levels. Teleport, a little bit of Unity, but not like team-wide, everyone run Unity. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I just haven't seen enough, but Unity seems good, but not as necessary as EMP and Teleport. And that, I'm just talking about battleships. You'll see other stuff on transports for sure, specifically Time Machine. But anyway, so that's the problem with laser. It's already not that strong because of its the length of time you needed to charge before it can compete with battery. And it targets exactly the same way as battery, so it directly has to be compared to battery, and it just struggles to do that, just because of how long it needs to charge. So that's before you even put EMP into the equation. So EMP is going to cancel the charge on laser every time it goes off. And maybe this isn't the case for all guilds, but every single person in my guild, I think, is running EMP right now. And you'll see it. Even they are running one or two EMP, which is smart, but also they're running lasers, so that means they're canceling their own laser charge anytime they feel the need to use EMP. They also have, I think it's the guy running Mirror, he's also running dual lasers, and I actually like dual lasers a lot. I think it's a much better pick than single laser, and this is not a revolutionary statement. I think that's pretty commonly held, that dual laser is actually pretty good. So one takeaway from this is I wonder if they all were running Unity, and instead of running single laser, they were all running double laser, duals. I wonder if, they might have done much better or even won. But let's give them the benefit of the doubt going into this fight coming up. Maybe they open the fight with a massive mistake, and you're going to see it. It's very obvious. So in my previous video I put out, I talked a lot about positioning and holding the ground you want to hold and let your enemy make the first move. Because believe me, everybody going into White Star wants to get into the fight. And also, we have the planets, so they need to get into the fight. They don't have teleport. They have 1 duels and no mass batteries, so they can't even put pressure on our supports very well without fully winning the fight. So we're going to just camp out on these planets and let them come to us. And if you want to watch my other video, I'll explain more why. But that's a huge advantage, is to have the enemy to come to you and react to that is a huge advantage. So they need to initiate the fight, and they EMP them. The lone initiator comes out and EMPs himself and gets nothing for it. I don't know if he just wanted to hit the brakes and not walk into the rockets that are about to go where he was going. I think it's more likely that he just hit the button on accident and screwed himself. But let's watch it again. I think his team... Sorry, the app crashed. I'm going to have to reload it. I think his team starts to leave before he even triggers the EMP, so I don't know what they were doing. This guild also doesn't have a lot of White Star experience. I think they're like 2-0. So they have at least won the matches that they've played in, but they don't have a lot of experience. So maybe it's just a mistake, like a tactical mistake, or maybe it was just somebody hit the button on accident. I don't know. But so they start out. Also, they don't know this trick. They don't have teleport anyway. So I don't know if it's just that they don't know about this trick or if they don't have teleport in order to do it. But we're sending the interceptors in on them using the teleport trick, and really quickly destroying the Serbs in that sector with rockets. So they don't do either of those two things. So they take a little longer and are a little sloppier with killing their Serbs, and also don't send the interceptors at us. So there's already some consequences of their choices. So they don't have teleport to do this. They don't have the rockets are sort of a support thing anyway. So they just should be doing the rockets. There's really no reason not to, unless you just hate that strategy so much that you're willing to disadvantage yourself to not do it. But we'll get back into the moment where this guy EMPs himself. But you'll see we sort of have like a decent advantage here. Actually, at this point we don't, but they could have gotten a 4 versus 3 here if they acted a little sooner. But they didn't, and so you're gonna see it's gonna hurt them here in a second. But again, that's a tactical mistake, not a problem with their tech. They could have had a 3 versus 4 right there. But here comes the initiator, who's about to EMP himself. So instead of just letting that EMP expire, since his team decides to back up due to that mistake, I forgot to catch whether or not his team leaves first, but I don't want to crash the app again, so we'll just watch how this unfolds. So instead of waiting, we're going to go out and just kill this guy. And since they're moving, they can't turn around and hit us. They also don't have teleport. So if they're going to give us that ground, we're just going to move up and take that ground. And if we need to, fall back. But we're going to basically kill this guy in the process of getting to where we want to go. And he can't do anything about it because he's used his EMP and he doesn't have teleport. So he's going to go down pretty easily. The strongest guy in our guild there to mop him up. And so we had the option here, because we're in place, we could have backed up, but this looks like the fight we want to take. So now we have a 4 versus 3, when before they could have had a 4 versus 3. Actually, we have a 5 versus 3 because this guy's down here. And this guy over at the top left, up here, he had to go back and deal with those interceptors. So that actually paid off really big in the long run. It's going to be a big deal, because once that guy actually comes to the fight, he's like one of the only problems we have to genuinely deal with. So we get a little greedy here. We think that this fight's going to be so easy that we move our rockets away to start getting in place to collect relics. But we could have mopped this fight up in about a second if we had just stayed and rocketed the hell out of them, because they're EMP'd and they have single target weapons. They would have never been able to stop the rockets from just annihilating them. But we get a little greedy and try to take this fight without rockets. And when we first got into the fight, we were a little worried because it looked bad in the time machine. But that's because all of their mods are direct, meaning like Unity directly affects your weapon in the moment. And what else? I guess they have EMP and some other stuff. But so their things in the time machine take effect right away. Also, laser not affected or not negatively impacted in the time machine right when the fight starts. But once we start getting our EMPs in there and getting a nice rotation, there's just nothing they can do really, because they only have unity and single laser. They have one or two EMPs to try to upset what we're doing, but they don't time it very well. So we basically just wear them down without rocket. Like if rockets were coming in, this fight would have already been over. And you'll see not only do they not get any relics, they don't get any kills. Not only do they not get any kills, they don't do any hull damage. So that's a pretty big loss. And I've pointed out the tactical mistakes they made and maybe just the button pushing mistakes they made, but it also has to do with their tech choices. Like if you can't even get through the shield, that's a problem. It also has to do with the fact that we were able to let them come to us. Like I was talking about with reaction is important. That also is a big advantage for us, but we actually were careless in that fight and not using rockets and still didn't take any hull damage. So I think that is not a great argument for the laser unity combo. It's interesting. I also forgot to talk about time machine. The time machine use is interesting because it speeds up their laser charge. It also more quickly makes EMP expire. But I don't know. It's also speeding up our guns, because basically time machine speeds up everything. So it's essentially like anything under the time machine or the time warp, just makes everything happen more quickly, as if time were warping forward. So unless you can navigate your time warp to only touch your guys and not touch the enemies, it just means that all the things that would have happened just happen faster. And I could see in their heads, like, if we could get this in the perfect spot, our EMPs will not be as much of a problem getting EMP'd and not having it ourselves, because we'll just make it expire more quickly with the time warp. And also we can more quickly ramp up our lasers with time warp at the same time. And that's a cool idea, but it's really, really hard to navigate time warp to be in that perfect spot like that. And if you do, it's only going to be for a second. So we actually had so many relics here that we couldn't hold all of them. This guy at the bottom here, he only has like a 6 space in his ship or something like that, so his max was 1. And so we couldn't even pick up all the relics that were here still. But I do still think that it was an interesting strategy, or it's an interesting tech choice. And I wonder if you just did it with duels or battery or maybe even what's the other one? Maybe even mass battery, because if you can create a big team fight where you have a big death ball of 5 dudes and the enemy feels that they need to confront your death ball with another death ball, and it makes one massive team fight, mass battery could actually be really strong, because mass battery's damage output, if it hits 3 targets, is actually really high, especially if you've leveled it up a good amount. And that damage is going to be spread out, but in my experience, damage tends to get spread out anyway. It's hard to pick your target. It would be great if you could focus fire down one dude before anybody else, but it tends to get spread out anyway. Because if you target one dude, like, he can fall back and force the target onto somebody else. It just tends to get spread out. So in possibility, like, if 5 guys with Unity had mass battery, that's a lot of damage. Also, duels, If you can get duels ramped up with your Unity, that's also a lot of damage. If you have confidence in your ability to get time warp, that's even more, because you're time warping your laser to charge faster. I really think the greatest failing of their strategy is, well, first of all, you have to use rockets at the warp gate. I know that people in the Discord and other places say, like, oh, rockets aren't that strong, there's ways to counter it. It's like, your ways to counter it are just not to get grouped up, but you're gonna get grouped up. Like, there's gonna be a big team fight, and even if you can hit one person, if you can hit one person with a rocket, that's huge damage for free, and that person could get locked there with consecutive EMPs or barriers, and they're just screwed. There are ways to try to avoid getting rocketed, but if you think that rockets can simply be countered, I think that you're not using rockets correctly, or they're not being used correctly against you. Because tell me how to counter somebody firing rockets at you when you can't use a gun and you can't move. I just don't see it. There's you could teleport out of the way, but you get one teleport. The guys at the warp gate, they can keep firing rockets. So I don't know. Maybe you'll tell me in the comments. But there's a reason that everyone seems to be using that strategy, and it's not because they're fighting bad guilds who don't know how to counter rockets. It's because rockets are, the way that they've worked the mechanics of rockets is overpowered, and in my opinion, not fun, and not conducive to competitive play. But let's not get derailed on the rockets thing. I think the other greatest failing, other than their lack of the use of rockets, is that they used laser instead of dual lasers. And I think if they use dual lasers, there's a interesting possibilities there. Especially if you take out some of their most major mistakes, like the self EMP, and the losing the opportunity to take a 3v4 and then later taking a 3, or losing the opportunity to take a 4v3 and then taking a 3v4 after that. I think if you remove those mistakes and you put duels in, it could have been a totally different game, and would be interesting to see how that played out. But suggesting duels isn't all that revolutionary of a suggestion, and also you see some Unity already, but I just think it's interesting because you don't see that much Unity typically, at least in my experience, yeah. That's just my thought. Don't run single laser, I guess, is what I would take away from this. But yeah, I'm curious what other people think. So please let me know in the comments. And thanks for watching.